But that report revealed only 4% of active DSA members work blue-collar jobs.
The far left DSA is having a moment, but this data really kind of embarrasses them. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, your home for independent and nonpartisan commentary and analysis on politics, media, internet culture, and more. And we're checking back in with our far left friends, though really they're not that friendly, over at the Democratic Socialists of America, the leftist organization dedicated to essentially ending American system of government and way of life as we know it. Well, they are having a moment with congressional candidates, about to have a gubernatorial nominee, and increasingly some of the most popular figures in the Democratic Party, like Zoran and AOC and Bernie, are affiliated with or associated with the DSA. Yet they claim to be these working class champions. But that claim is being hilariously, in my view at least, undercut by this data that's being recirculated by the media right now. But I'll play you a Fox News clip that's going to let us into some data collected by the DSA itself back in 2021 that reveals whether their membership and demographics line up with the working class that they claim to represent and stand for. Let's listen.
The Democratic Socialists of America announcing they now have over 120,000 members. That's a new record for the organization as it continues to rack up Democratic primary wins. Alexandria Hoff has been tracking the DSA for us all week. She joins us live with more on this. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Bill. Yeah, I'm going to start with a fun fact I realized while playing with some of the numbers on this story. The demographic breakdown of the DSA, it's almost identical to the membership of USA Ultimate Frisbee. Maybe that's expected, maybe not. But the best source of stats we have within the DSA is a 2021 internal survey. At the time, the organization had about 95,000 members with a response rate on that survey of 14%. But that report revealed only 4% of active DSA members work blue-collar jobs. Most in the DSA work in academia, technology, or healthcare.
I'm sorry. You can't make this up. Only 4% of the working class revolutionaries are actually working class blue collar people who do blue collar jobs. That is hilarious. They claim to be representing, the tradesmen and the laborers, and their biggest jobs are actually academia. Bruh. I mean, I'm not surprised, but that is hilarious. I will say it makes a lot of sense because ideas like abolish the police, abolish jails and prisons, and complete open borders with ending all deportations, those are the kinds of things that I think you have to be in an ivory tower or in a campus bubble to even really consider as serious. I mean, somebody who's out in the real world working every day with their hands and commuting and seeing maybe in a city, who knows, or just seeing the world perhaps outside of an affluent and educated bubble, isn't going to think for a second, even if they lean liberal, even if they're a registered Democrat, isn't going to think for a second that that's a reasonable thing to even consider. Abolish police, abolish jail. Sure, Jan. Least surprising twist of all time. I would love to know how many of them are like 33-year-old PhD students in some field that ends in studies. Oh, oy vey. I'm amazed. They chose to release that data to the public. That's crazy. Anyway, let's keep going here.
The most mainstream definition of working class is someone who lacks a four-year degree. Well, 80% of DSA members have one, and 35% have an advanced degree. As of 2021, the organization was 77% white, something...
There's all that minority representation from our social justice warrior friends. No, I want to talk about that as well, because it is not surprising to me whatsoever that most of the people affiliated with DSA have college degrees and that a huge chunk of them have advanced degrees. That doesn't surprise me, but it does remind me that some of these degrees are really not worth the paper they're printed on. Because I'm sorry, but anybody who is a member of the DSA, that is a lunatic organization. You are signing on to something that is so extreme, it sounds like a parody or a scene out of Portlandia, and you're signing up to it and saying, yes, I stand on this. It's like you must have no knowledge of history first of all. You must have, in terms of how this kind of Marxism has gone awry throughout the 20th century and in many of the very leaders that they praise, actually. But you also have to just not have a whole lot of pragmatism or critical thinking to be on board with this stuff. Yet many people with these advanced degrees from these elite institutions are falling for it hook, line, and sinker. That tells us something about those degrees and about those advanced education institutions. And it's not something good. It's really not. Anyway, we'll keep going here.
Something National Co-Chair Megan Romer says they've been working to change.
We take it seriously that our demographics do not map as closely to the working class writ large as we would like them to be.
And that last survey had 64% male within the organization, though 10% chose other as their gender. Romer says the DSA has achieved more gender balance in recent years.
Other is crazy. Male, female, other, and it's 10%. 10% is crazy. But it makes sense. If you're delusional enough to think that you're non-binary, you would also be delusional enough to think the government should run the entire economy and that we can have no borders and no police and just kumbaya. I guess delusion begets delusion. So now that I think about it, it actually makes perfect sense. But it's just hilarious because they could have kept this data private, but they chose to release it to the public, the DSA did, even though it will never, ever help them beat any of the allegations and stereotypes against this organization and confirms them all to a T. Really, you couldn't make this stuff up. But yes, tell me more about this working class revolution that's fighting for minorities by standing on stuff that minority voters don't want, like abolishing police and prisons and open borders, and by overwhelmingly being white, affluent, and hyper-educated, and non-binary. Bruh. The disproportionate non-binary representation is so perfect. That's just chef's kiss. You couldn't write this. Anyway, we'll watch the rest of this here.
Years. In 2016, when the DSA really took off, the average age of a member was 67. It's now 33.
Oh, wow.
Here's former member Jake Altman.
There's no question. When I was going to meetings in Boston, it was a handful of older white men. And I think now, if you go to a DSA meeting, you would see many young faces. It's been a complete transformation in the organization.
So Altman feels older members have fled the organization after realizing how extreme the DSA's platform was becoming. And one defining trait of the DSA is that at large, they are very highly educated, but moderate to low earners in relation to that. So many feel that this explains why some might fall into socialism, feeling that the system failed to deliver for them.
I'm sorry, the Fox correspondent delivered that in the shadiest way imaginable. She's like, just pointing out, the data show these people have advanced degrees, but low incomes. Like they're not the successful ones with the degrees that pay off and the good jobs that can come from advanced degrees. No, I mean, it really is probably very true. And it sounds like the statistics bear this out, that these people, many of them, have probably like a philosophy PhD or a poetry master's or some other, or gender studies PhD. And then they get out in the world and can't get a job or are still, teaching assistants at 32 and living off a low stipend at some university. And then they're like, wow, I just can't afford life and can't get ahead. Capitalism sucks. It's like, no, it's actually the consequences of your own decisions and your own bad decisions and your own inability to thrive. Now, I'm sure that's not every case. I'm sure there are people who, got a good degree and tried to get a job and just struggled for whatever reason. And I'm certainly not suggesting that the status quo is wonderful and amazing and affordable. That's not the case, but that is not capitalism's fault writ large, first of all. And two, a lot of these people sound like they did have the opportunities and they just failed to launch. Like many of these people sound like they had parents that paid for them to go to the elite school and get the degree, and they weren't worrying about where their next meal would come from. So it's not like they're the underdogs who couldn't get ahead in a capitalism dog-eat-dog world. It's like they had that opportunity and just failed, and then decided to project that failure outwards and become socialist revolutionaries. I don't know. That tracks to me. Sounds about right. But the bleak thing about this, and why it's not just like laughable and funny, but is actually concerning, is that this organization and this trajectory and ideological movement is where the Democrats are going. Really, it's becoming the new center of gravity in the Democratic Party. And you don't have to take my word for it. Here's a clip from CNN where they go over the favorability data, and it finds that all the most popular figures among the Democrats, Bernie, Zoran, AOC, all self-described Democratic Socialists. Let's watch.
Zoran Mamdani is an interesting example of this because look at this favorability number. He is the most popular Democrat among Democrats right now, right? By a lot.
It was like something like 30%.
But I mean, Hakeem Jeffries,
in comparison to everyone else.
In comparison to everyone else.
Yeah.
And then when you look a little deeper into the numbers, there was some skepticism of him among voters of color, but that has shifted. He has net favorability among voters of color in the Democratic Party right now. So there are shifts that can happen and are
certainly.
Oh boy. There you have it, folks. This is the direction they're going in, the direction they're doubling down. I mean, Zoran has put on this like veneer of moderation, but I don't believe it. I don't buy it. He spent the first decade of his political career talking about queer liberation means defund the police and tweeting out Karl Marx quotes. So the guy is a radical leftist. Whether he can actually implement all that much of it as mayor of New York City, I kind of doubt, and certainly remains to be seen. But some of the policies he has implemented are already being very harmful, like his rent freeze that's just going to backfire and contribute more to the housing crisis. But yeah, this is, I think, the unfortunate direction things are headed. And it may be that they have to actually have someone get in power, enact some of this disastrous insanity, and have it go terribly, terribly wrong for people to realize what a bad idea it is. But it's just a shame because you'd think they'd be able to just draw that conclusion from history. It's not like, and I saw Jonah Goldberg, the conservative writer, point this out online. None of these ideas, whether it's the DSA, whether it's Hasan Piker, none of these ideas are new, right? The beliefs and delusions they have about economics and human nature and the proper role of government are actually very old. And in terms of many of them are not new. We saw them throughout the 20th century, and you could even find direct phrases out of the DSA platform that sound very similar to things that were in the Soviet Union's constitution. However, there's probably a couple things in there that are new. I don't think they had trans kids and fight for gender affirming care in the Soviet Union. That might be a new one. But broadly speaking, these ideas, these revolutionaries are like acting like they've captured lightning in a bottle and they have the new secret sauce. It's not actually new. It's tired, old, failed Marxism repackaged and not repackaged well in my view, but people are falling for it. So what can you do other than laugh and enjoy the ride? I don't know, guys. That's my take. You'll have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you aren't yet, do hit the like button and consider becoming a channel member here on YouTube to support my content. Hit the join button or click the link in the pinned comment. It's the best way to support me. I call out the left and the right, and I try to be nonpartisan and honest. Fortunately, not always the best business model, but I'm sticking to it, so I do need support from viewers like you. And with that, guys, we'll be back with more real soon.